Well, good morning, everyone. It is great to see so many of you coming into the room from looks like from all over the world, including right here in Atlanta. So, Kirsten, I'm going to wait for you to go ahead and or give me the go ahead for when to get started. You should be able to hear me now on YouTube. You should be able to see me on YouTube, and everything else should be running from here, as well as the chat running on Blue Jeans, which I see a bunch of you are already in the chat. So. Looks good so far. I'm going to have the Blue Jeans audio muted just so we're not getting the feedback on the YouTube stream. So I'll be relying on the chat for any information or things I need to know. Or Kirsten, if you want to say something to me directly, you can do it on Slack as well. Just let me know. All right, I see I got the go ahead. Just give me 1 second. I just realized how I could hear the Blue Jeans if I had my AirPods. So I'm asking someone to bring me my AirPods right now. And I will kick things off. I won't wait for them, but I will go ahead and get started. All right, welcome everyone, and happy Wednesday, Hump Day, if that makes any difference anymore. I hope that you are all staying safe. I hope that you are all well from wherever you are in the world. It is my pleasure to be presenting to you live today. I'm in cloudy Atlanta, but it was a great day yesterday, a beautiful day, good times to be out for a walk. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe. I've been with the company for it'll be 24 years actually this July. So yay, 24 years. And it's my pleasure to show you and walk you through some of my favorite things within the next hour on Creative Cloud, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and whatever else we have time for. Like I said, I'm not currently hearing what's going on in Blue Jeans, but I don't think they're talking right now anyway. I don't see the talking icon. And here come my AirPods. There they are. So let me put those in real quick, or at least one of these in, and then I'll set it up so I could hear it on the Blue Jeans computer, and then we'll go ahead and get going. Oh, I heard the chime, and there it is. And let's see if it'll connect. And it did. So if you say something on Blue Jeans right now, I should be able to hear you. Anybody? Anybody? Say something on Blue Jeans just to make sure I can hear it. All right. Well, while we're waiting for that to catch up so you guys can hear it, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic. So once again, I'm going to walk you Now I can hear you. Thank you. All set. Okay, so, wait. Hang on. Hold on. I can hear you, but I didn't tell it to use the mic. Unmute my audio. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, cool. All right, so without further ado, let me go ahead and switch over to my desktop so you guys can see what I'm doing here. I've got Creative Cloud open in the background. I'm going to start with that because that is one of my favorite new features and a few tips to do with the Creative Cloud desktop app itself. So, for example, you'll notice that we've had Creative Cloud now since 2013. It's hard to believe it's been 7 years, but the application itself on the desktop had always been this little window that either popped up from your Windows taskbar or from your Mac menu bar. And now it's a full screen experience. It's actually, hang on 1 second here. 1 second, let me turn this down because I'm actually hearing myself now. Someone's not, here, let's do that. Okay. So it's this full desktop experience, and that's one of the things I love about it is that it's not just a sliver of an application. The other thing I love about it is we go here mainly to install new applications, and that's great. And we can go to one spot and see if there are any updates and when they were last applied. That's great. But even if you've installed the ones you always use, but you're wanting to try something different, you can go in and just go to a specific category. So if I wanted to get into, let's say, video and motion, I can go to the video and motion category to see which applications are for video and motion, and then go ahead and install those right on the spot. Also, if you have an application installed, here's a quick way to get into the uninstaller. I know a lot of you are dealing with IT departments and they'll handle all that for you, but on your own machines at home, or maybe while you're at home, during what we're going through, you can do your uninstall. You can also install other versions, and that's primarily for people that need an older version for hardware compatibility. Maybe you're not on the latest and greatest hardware, or you're running some plugin or other software that only works with the older version and hasn't been updated yet. So that way you can get right there. But aside from that, the main thing I like here too is that you can go from the apps section, which is all great. I love the apps, but you can go into your work. So connect to YouTube, can't access the page. Make sure, I see a guest saying they still can't connect to YouTube. Make sure you're on the updated link. So I know that there was a link published earlier, that link changed. So make sure you're on the link that's currently I see in the chat and on the slide there. And hopefully you'll be able to. And if you're having a problem connecting, you can't hear me anyway. So I'm just going to keep going. Let's go in. And so the Your Work section is showing me all of my Creative Cloud libraries. And it's showing me something that, again, you might not think that it's there, but it is. And that's this little plus sign, which, of course, that would let me create a new library. But in addition to creating my own libraries, I can follow public libraries. And when I follow public libraries, this takes me to a section in the app, this kind of secret backdoor, to libraries that aren't by me, they're by other artists, they're by graphic designers, they're by photographers, they're by companies that wanted to share content for you to use, and you can follow these libraries. So, for example, Kyle Webster, before he worked for Adobe, used to design brushes for Photoshop and our new mobile apps. Now he has a sample brush pack, and you can just follow that library. If you're into gradients, you can follow the web gradients. If you're into Google Material Design, you can follow the Google Material Design library. So you can follow these libraries, and here's an illustrations by a specific artist. And if I click on that, it'll take me to those illustrations, and I can either copy this to my existing work or follow the library so that I get any updates that they create. So here's some SVG graphics, and of course these are all provided royalty-free for you to use. So this is great that we have these extra features, these extra things that are here in the Creative Cloud app just by going into the add feature in the Your Work where, like I said, normally you would be able to add libraries, but you can also add and follow libraries from other people. Okay, let's jump into the applications now. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Photoshop. And with Photoshop open, I'm going to take you through just, again, some of my favorite, randomly some of my favorite tips and tricks. A couple of these I showed at Adobe Max during the keynote, but a few of these I haven't shown yet. So this will be fun for people that watch me on a regular basis. You'll still hopefully catch a couple new things. So one of the things you'll notice here, I've got just two layers. I've got the flower on its own layer in the background, separated. And of course, we can free transform that. And one of the things I didn't really get a chance to show at Max, even when I showed this example, was that we know that the free transform allows us to scale, make it bigger, make it smaller. But what we didn't, what we've been doing for decades in Photoshop is having to hold down the Shift key to scale it proportionally. And we changed it so that you wouldn't have to hold down the Shift key. And of course, when you make a change in an application that's 30 years old, no matter what you change, you're going to have people that are saying, I loved it the old way, I love it the new way, and nobody's wrong. It's just, people have their personal preferences. I personally love it the new way. I love not having to hold down the Shift key, and it just scales it proportionally and does what it's supposed to do. However, if you're one of the people that says, you should have to hold down the Shift key, you're wrong. No, I'm just kidding. If you're saying that, you can now do it a couple of different ways. Obviously, you can hold down the Shift key and it will distort it, does the opposite. But if you want to change the behavior back, you say, nope, I don't ever want to do it that way. It should go back to the way it used to be. You can change that in the preferences. So the team did come out with one of the more recent updates. You can go into preferences and switch it back. Great. But what if you don't want to switch it back all the time? And here's where the tip is. I like not having to hold down the Shift key most of the time, but let's say there are instances where I'm working on stuff and I do want to have to hold down the Shift key because most of the time I want to distort. Well, you'll notice that there's a toggle for the proportions up here, maintain aspect ratio, and that's really what it's doing. It's maintaining the aspect ratio without me having to hold down the key. If I turn that off, what that's telling Photoshop to do is not have to hold down the Shift key anymore, or I'm sorry, I have to hold down the Shift key now to keep it proportional, and it's sticky. So you had this option before where you could turn it on and off, but it would always revert back to what it used to be. Now it will stay off until you turn it back on. So you quit Photoshop, come back tomorrow, it's still off. Come back next week, it's still off. Come back next year, it's still off until you turn it back on. So you're in control of when that feature is on or off. So again, I like it on, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it on so it stays on for me and I'm not having to hold down the Shift key. Now, one of the other reasons why I use this example was that while you're in free transform, you have the warp capability. And when you're in warp, in the past, you would have gotten a default grid of 3x3. That would have been your grid, and you had no control over it other than the handles that were already presented to you this way. Well, now, as you can see, I can have no grid. I can have a 3x3, a 4x4, or all the way up to a 5x5 quickly, just with a menu option. Or even if I say, give me no grid, I can go in with these tools and specify where I want to be able to bend this flower. So I can say I want to be able to bend it right there. I want to be able to bend it here. I want to be able to bend it down here. I'm controlling, by putting in these points, everywhere that I want to be able to bend it customized based on the image that I'm working on. The other cool thing about this is that it will, you notice it selected the last point that I added, but you can drag select, I hold down my Shift key actually, you can drag select the points that you want to be able to move so that you're moving just those points, so we can make our flower kind of dance back and forth. Or I can say, no, I just want to control these top points, and that way I can make the flower, kind of grow up a little bit. Maybe go that way. And I get a much more predictable and fluid warping example by being able to control my warp and being able to control where I'm putting the points and how I'm selecting them and how I can select multiple points at the same time. And if you want to select these interspersed points, you can always hold down your Command key on the Mac or your Control key on Windows and select individual non-consecutive points to get them where you want them to be. Okay, so that's warping and scaling and proportional scale and changing the defaults and all of the above. All right, we're gonna go back to that one. I'm gonna close these as I go through them. That way it'll just pop open another image, although I'm not quite ready to go to that one yet. Oop, hang on, didn't really mean to add text there. Let's get out of that and let's go here. Let's go to this one. Okay, so this particular example is kind of fun, not because it's just food and food's always fun. This one is great for talking about making selections. With every new version of Photoshop, especially every new major version of Photoshop, there's always new ways to make selections. And you might think, well, why do you add another way to make a selection? Because you can never have too many ways to make a selection. Every photo is going to be different. Every instance is going to be different. You're always going to want the best way to select something depending on what it is you're trying to select. So in this case, if you're trying to select these particular items, well, we have something that's Adobe Sensei powered or artificial intelligence called Select Subject. But in this case, what's the subject? Is it all of the food here? Is it all of the bagels? Is it the tomatoes? Is it the leaves? It has to guess at what the subject is. So if I say select subject, it does actually a pretty good job of figuring out that those are, for the most part, those are the subjects in the photo. But if I don't want all of the subjects, I want individual pieces, then I have to go back to the individual selection tools like Quick Select and Lasso and even the pen tool or whatever it is you're trying to use. What if you could have select subject on a tool? What if it could just select based on what you're telling it to select, not the whole subject? So we have a new tool called the Object Selection tool. And the Object Select tool works in two forms. It works in a lasso, and it works in a rectangle. So if I'm in a lasso and I want to select that one top tomato up there, I can just go ahead and use my lasso, and I'm being very careful, as you can see. No, I'm not being careful at all, but when I let go, it says, oh, you want that? No problem. Got it. Because it figured out, based on what I lassoed, what the subject was in that selection area. So same thing here, if I go around this bagel, and I even cut across the other things, no problem. I'm guessing you wanted that bagel as your selection because that made the most sense as what the subject is. And even if I go in here where I'm trying to get these individual pieces here, again, it figured out that, oh, you must want that slice of tomato there, or you must want this leaf. Now, keep in mind, artificial intelligence is only so smart. In this case, it got it perfectly. It got the leaf, even though there was a seed right next to it, poppy seed right next to it. Sometimes it may select poppy seed because it can't always figure out what's what, but it does a really good job. Now, you might say, well, why would I need the rectangle? Well, the rectangle can sometimes be faster. So if I use my rectangle on this area here, and it says, oh, you want both of those? No problem. You got it. So the object selection tool with a rectangle or with a lasso is awesome. I use it all the time now, especially when I'm compositing and trying to select pieces of an image to add to other pieces of an image. All right, so that's the object selection tool, definitely one of my favorites. We will come back to you, Jesse, in just a minute. Oh, here's another example. I already had something selected here, but the object selection tool on this weight here, and again, it figured out, well, you probably want the weight, not the hand. The hand looks like it's something else, and it's figuring that out along the way. Same thing here, even with the rectangle, it figured out, in this case, the weight and the shadow. So in that case, I may, no, don't get the shadow. Let's go back to the lasso, and let's not go down so far, and tell it what to get. Oh, okay, you want the weight. You don't want the weight. You don't want the shadow. So again, just remembering that you have this great tool now for making selections quickly and for the most part, very accurately within Photoshop. All right, I keeps wanting to bring up Jesse. So let's take care of Jesse right now. So here's a situation where I love this image. Maybe I want to use it for social distancing. The only thing I don't like about it is I don't like the railing being visible. And it just means that he's on a bridge or he's on a balcony, but that railing is kind of distracting to me. So how would I get rid of that? Well, I could painstakingly try and clone all the rest of the city into the place of the railing, or I can use the content aware technology built into Photoshop. Problem with content aware is content aware uses the surrounding pixels to fill something in. So it may not do a great job depending on what the surrounding pixels are. So to save time, I've already made a selection of the railing. Just you'll see it's very, very loose. I'm going to load that selection in, and it's called railing. I'm just going to go ahead and select it. And it's just a very loose like outline, but I did get tight on the sweater here, and I did get kind of tight on the sweater here. I kind of missed part of that. Let's go to the lasso tool. And let's go ahead and add that in. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and add in that little piece that I missed there. Okay, so now I've added that part into the selection, and I've got the railing tight on the sweater but loose everywhere else. So if I were to just hit delete on my keyboard, that would try and use content aware fill. Let's see what happens. If I hit delete, content aware, let's click OK. It may come out okay, it may not. In that case, it came out pretty good. So content aware technology gets really, really good over time. But let's undo that. And let's give it some more control. Let's pick and choose different things that we want to happen. That's all in the new content aware fill workspace. So if I go to edit, content aware fill, that brings up this workspace, and it shows me what I've got selected right now. And it shows me what the preview would look like based on these settings on the right-hand side. So it's showing me exactly what I'm going to get if I were to click OK right now. Now I could go in and play. I can say right now it is doing a good job. Here, let me go back. And I could say, what are we showing here? I just want to see what my option is set to. So the green indicates the excluded area. So what the green is saying is these are the areas don't bring in to the selected area. So I don't want to bring in any of his clothes. I don't want to bring in any of his face. Any of the buildings are fine. That stuff's all fair game to bring in. But I'm excluding any of this. And I could, by the way, I could even go up here and say this, even this stuff is okay to include, but none of this other stuff below. So I'm telling it by taking the green off the areas that are okay to bring in to that area of the railing. And again, after I make each change, it doesn't update. So I can also go in and play around with the color adaptation. I can say none, see what that does. And we can zoom in, by the way, and see what this is going to really look like, because I'm really concerned about where it is around him. And here's the difference between none, the default. The default made a little bit of brought a little bit of artifact in there. I could go in and say maybe high. High actually looks pretty good. Not the teddy bear. Very high. I kind of like. I'm kind of torn between none and default. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with none. So in this case, that's the one I'm going to go with, and I can output that to the current layer. I can also output that to a new layer. So basically it will apply the content aware fill onto a new layer above it. So if I do that, click OK, the content aware fill stuff is right here on top. I don't know why my monitor's flashing, but it is. Anyway, my content aware fill is on top, and just covering up everything there. So you have the original image still that you can mess with and play with, and you can go in and now you can do any tweaks you want to do to the content aware fill stuff that it added. I'm going to close this image, see if it'll stop flashing. Yes, it stopped flashing. Okay, good. Okay, next up, let's go here. This is another cool one. So speaking along the same lines of removing things from their background or removing parts of an image, you got this this is from Adobe stock, this nice stock image of this business gentleman here on a business background, but maybe I want him on this background. I want him on this break room background instead. So in this case, How would I cut him out? Well, the beauty of this subject is it's all hard edges. He doesn't have any flowing hair, which is awesome. He's got, it's just, this would be very easy to select. You can use quick select, you use select subject, you use it a multitude of ways to select this. But chances are, even if it's easy to select, even if you do it with one click with select subject, you're going to want to mask the existing background to show the background that's currently behind them. Well, that's at least 2 steps. Select subject, add a layer mask. What if it didn't have to be 2 steps? What if it could just easily be 1? And the Photoshop team thought the same way. So in the properties panel, they actually, if this only works if you're on a layer, but they actually included a 1-button click called remove background. And it basically does 2 things. It does a select subject, so it's very dependent on the quality of your select subject or your subject being selected. And number 2, it will mask it for you. So if I just click 1 button, done. That's it. Add a layer mask. I could tweak it if I need to, but in 1 click, select subject, add a layer mask, hide the existing background, show me what's underneath. So just that easily for easy subjects. Now, of course, if it's got hair, you're still going to need to use select and mask. But if it's something that doesn't have hair or fur or anything that's got varying soft edges, then this will work great. So you're probably saying, well, that's cool, but who would have an easy subject like that to select? So I hear you. Let's go ahead and do this. You mean something like this, where it's not easy at all? It is on one color background, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this stock image in. And I found the one with the wildest blowing hair that I could find on Adobe stock to prove my point. And that is, I'm going to show you a tip on selecting and masking a subject like this to get better results. Because that's what, at the end of the day, we want results that look real. We want results that will look as good as possible. So in this case, the mistake that most of us have made, or many of us, including myself, have made in the past, is we make our initial selection too close to the edge. What I mean by that is if I go into my select menu and I choose select subject, which select subject isn't good for hair. It's going to try and select the hair as best it can, which means it's going to go all the way out to the edge. It's going to miss stuff. It's going to go to the edge. It's just not going to be great. But if I choose select subject, that's exactly what it did. Shoulders, arms, great. Hair, It missed hair over here. It did not do a good job here. It's because that's not what it's designed for. It's not designed for hair. But with that said, that doesn't mean I can't get good results. I just have to back up a little bit on what it selected already. So in this case, I'm going to use my lasso and I'm going to subtract some hair. I'm going to hold down my option key and I'm going to say, don't try, you missed all this. Don't even try it. Don't even select all this. Like you just fill that in with a selection. That's just not going to be great. So I'm subtracting these big holes out of the selection area. And the stuff that's on the edge, you know what? Just skip it. Don't even try and get the stuff on the edge. Don't even try and get the stuff in there. I'll deal with that in a minute. So here we're actually, let me undo that one. That one's okay. But anyway, here, same thing. Hold down the option key and I'm just subtracting this part of the selection out where it did not do a good job. Okay, same thing here. I can actually subtract that out as well. So now I basically have cut out some pieces of hair that I don't want it to try and select. And basically I'm just pulling the selection back away from the edges. Now that I've done that, now I can go to the next phase, which is select and mask. And select and mask it's gonna look horrible. Yep, it looks horrible. It looks just like that. Because it's a hard edge selection, but I've now told it what to ignore. I probably could have told it to ignore that too. But I told it what to ignore, and now I can go in and clean it up. And that is what this next brush is for. This second brush, the Refine Edge brush, which we use all the time, but we tend to use it all the way to the edge, and that's where it gets confusing because it's saying, oh, you selected all this blue, you must want it. Like this might be a trouble area. But by eliminating all of that extra area, now I can paint it back in. So with the Refine Edge tool, I'm going to start out here, out where the blue used to be or the teal used to be. And then I'm just going to paint into the hair to clean it up and give me those nice soft edges of hair. All of this stuff that should have been there, but should not have the teal color in it. Let's put all this back. All right, and I know you're going to still see teal around the edges, these colors around the edges. That's okay. We're going to see another feature to fix that. But now it's about bringing back in those very flyaway long hairs that have the background on them. Filling in the parts where I told it to forget about it. Calculates for a second. And then we're going to keep going. Just bringing that all back in. And make one more pass around just to make sure I'm not leaving anything off. Let it recalculate. Okay, one more pass. Depending on the subject, usually takes 2 to 3 passes to get it right, to get spots you might have missed. Yeah, like that hair right there I was missing. Okay, so now we've taught it that this is the hair that should be back, but what's happening now, we're still getting contamination from that background all over the hair itself. So we'll do the next best thing. We'll come down to this magical feature, decontaminate colors. We'll click on it. And we get that. Now, decontaminate colors, they've added since the beginning. When it first came out, it was just an on-off. Now it's an on-off with a slider. So if it's too much decontamination, you can pull back on it. But in this case, I kind of like it the way it is. I still see a spot where I missed down here. Just go ahead and paint that back in. Let it recalculate that. And we're back. Okay, so now I'm going to output that as a new layer with a mask. Click OK. And I can always go in and by the way, if we wanted to see what that looked like, that's the mask that it created with selected mask done the right way. Not trying to select to the edges in the first selection, but painting those edges back in with the Refine Edge tool. That's going to give you the best results. And now if I were to pick this layer up and move it around, no problem. Now there's still one problem with the image itself, and that is she is still not the right tone for this sunset or sunrise cityscape. So we're going to do one thing real quick. We're just going to use the mask that we already made. Command click, go to the background, add the background. Hang on, let me do one thing. Hold on. I shouldn't have moved her first. I should have done this first. Not that one, this one. I shouldn't have moved her over. All right, let's do it now. Okay, we'll go to the background layer. Command J, which basically just isolates that part of the image onto its own layer. We're going to pull that all the way up to the top, and then we're going to go ahead and run a filter on it. We're going to run a filter that will average those colors because we don't want the city all over her. We want the color all over her. So we're just going to go ahead and go to blur, average. That will average all the colors, and including that bar. I shouldn't have got over there on the right hand side, but that's okay. We're going to switch it to a blend mode, which by the way, we have blend modes that you can see just by hovering now. We're going to switch it to color, which is too much. And then we're going to just lower the opacity to around the 30 range, around 35, 30, 30-ish. And what that will do is just tone down the bright colors in her skin and her blouse and her hair to kind of match what it would look like if she were really outside taking the shot against that lighting, against that background. It's just a quick little tip for that. All right, and again, I probably moved her over a little too much, but you get the idea. All right, so that is the right way to cut out an image that's not one-clickable, not easy, not something that's that we think should be one click, but it's not. That's and by the way, whenever someone says, "Oh, it was easy because it was on a one-color background," well, actually, that made it harder because all of that color got reflected into her hair. So if you are trying to make it easy, photograph your subjects on a gray background because the gray is going to be the one that's least likely to reflect into the subject. All right, we have these beautiful birds here on this tree, and I love the colors. So let's talk about another one of my favorites here, and I'm going to have to speed things up to get to the other applications, so we might end it here on Photoshop, but I can always talk Photoshop all day. But we're going to go ahead and say from the library menu, we're going to hit new or plus, like we're adding something to the library. So we're going to add the foreground color, we're going to add the graphic. But there's also a new option now, create from image. And create from image in Photoshop now brings the Adobe Capture experience to the desktop. Adobe Capture is a mobile app on iOS and Android. You can go download it for free. And it lets you capture colors, brushes, patterns, shapes, looks, and did I say brushes? And one more, materials for 3D, all kinds of cool things you can do in Capture. However, having it on a desktop is pretty cool too, because now from an image, I can make a seamless pattern. If I want to play around with that pattern, I can move the image around in that pattern. Ooh, that's actually kind of cool. Okay, I'm saving that one. I've never done that one. I've never saw that one before. Anyway, that's kind of cool. You can save these as seamless patterns to be able to use in any of your designs going forward. So patterns are cool. You can make those vector shapes, and if I were to click save this, it would vectorize that outline. I could open it up in Illustrator, and I would have this as if it had been traced. So that's cool. Color themes. This is what I was really coming here for. We have color themes, which allow me to move these color stops around inside the image to get the exact colors from the image that I want to be able to use in my design. So one of the hard things for me whenever I'm designing something is, oh, what color should I use? What color should I? But I always have the image I usually want to use. So why not start with the image and then get the colors out of the image to use for the rest of the design, because you know they're going to match. So maybe I want to use some of that yellow. I want to use some of this red. Red, orange, reddish. Okay, let's go to the beak there. There we go. Get some of that red and then save that to my library as well. And you can also save it in the same modes that you had before, muted. This is it guessing what the colors would be based on the theme that you're choosing. And I can say none and again, go back and start over. All right. But anyway, once I save that theme, that saves it to my library as well. And new in this is also the ability to have gradients created from your image. So if I'm looking to create a gradient from these colors, I can get the gradient that I want just by dragging the gradients around. I can add more stops. I can see the colors that it's going to use and create a seamless gradient from that as well. All right, so now I can close this. And everything I just told it to add is in my Creative Cloud library. It's not only available to Photoshop, but available across the board. So if I want to use these in InDesign, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, After Effects, on mobile, anywhere I want to use them, my libraries are accessible to me. All right, moving on. Let's switch over to Illustrator. I've got Illustrator open. I'm going to pop open to this first document, and this is a good place to pick up. We talked about gradients in the last one. Let's continue talking about gradients here. So we got a couple of gradients already in place. I'm going to go ahead and select one of these parts of the image, and then I'm going to go to my gradient tool. Just hit the letter G there. And I have three types of gradients. You're used to two types. You're used to a linear gradient and a radial gradient. Now we have a freeform gradient. That's the third new type. So the freeform gradient allows me to literally plot points where I want to put them. And if you've ever tried to work with gradient mesh, you will definitely appreciate how much easier this is to create that same look, but without all the hassle that gradient mesh used to bring of having to know how to manipulate the gradient, how to manipulate the mesh. So I can just double click, add whatever colors I want. They're interactive, they're freeform, they're great. They basically allow me to create gradients that are lively and beautiful on the spot and easily editable to get the kind of looks that I'm looking for. That was just using the points. You can also, let's see if I go in and pick a different one here. You can also use the linear, or the lines, I should say. So if I were to click, it's like having the pen tool or curvature tool for your gradients. And each one of those stops is actually something that can be customized. So if you're trying to create a gradient along a path, this would be an easy way to do it, just by going in and creating that path with the tool and then applying your gradient stops along the way. I'm just randomly picking colors, by the way. So if they don't look great, know that it was not on purpose. All right. Cool. So freeform gradients, highly recommend you check it out. One of my favorite things in Illustrator. Let's move on. And let's go ahead and select this eye. Now, as you can see, this cat's eye logo has been placed throughout the illustration here. It's been placed on different artboards. It's been scaled. It's been rotated. It's been put everywhere. And if you use symbols, if you thought ahead and used a symbol, that's great. Because if you ever want to change the logo, no problem. You can change the logo. You can easily just change one time in the symbol and it updates everywhere. But if you didn't use symbols, you have the ability to still go back and make the changes without having to go and touch each one. You can go and start a global edit on your properties panel. So if I click Start Global Edit, you have the ability to now make changes to that one. So if I go in here and I say, oh, make it this color, click OK, they all get updated quickly and easily. No matter where they are, no matter what transformation's been done to them. And even if I do transform one, let's say I need them all to be a little bigger. I'm going to hold down the Shift key here. They all become a little bigger. Actually, let me undo that. And let me hold down the Option Shift so that it does it from the center out. There we go. They all get a little bigger from the center out, or they all get a little smaller from the center in. So you can control individual pieces of an image, but have it where you've replicated it throughout, you can quickly and easily. Now, we're using a logo as an example, but what if it's just a graphic element, something you drew and you duplicated all over the place? Again, just you wanted to change the color, you wanted to change the size, you wanted to change the shape. You can now do that with global edits. Okay, next up, visual font browsing. I'm going to go ahead and move this over a little bit. I think I can't remember which direction I want to move this in. But let's go ahead and now select this text. And we're used to going to a font menu and doing this. This has been around for years and years, and yay, we can see what it's going to look like. That's awesome. And I highly recommend it. I love being able to see it in context with whatever font I'm choosing so far. However, these are the fonts I have. These are the ones I have loaded right now, and it's great to be able to see them. Cool. But what if I want to see something that I don't have yet? That was never really a thing. Like, you could go to a font place, source, wherever you get fonts from, and you could even type your text in on that site or that application or that whatever, and see the font that you might pick that way, but you would never have been able to see it in context of your existing design, especially in the application you're already working on. I'm already in this application. I've already, let's say, put this text on something and I want to see what it would look like. Well, then I'd have to go visualize it in my head to figure it out. Well, now I can go in and I can go up to the very top of the font menu here and I can choose Find More. And when I choose Find More, it's activating the Adobe fonts. And now I'm visualizing thousands of fonts that I don't have loaded yet. These are all the fonts that I have access to in Adobe Creative Cloud. I actually kind of like that one. I'm kind of digging that one. What's that one called? Citadel. So if I like Citadel, because I'll scroll this menu forever, so let's stop here. If I like Citadel, I can go ahead and sync that font right now. I can, first of all, make it a favorite, so I'll remember it. And I can sync that font down right now, and it's activating that font. So just while I was in context of what I'm working on, I'm able to go in and choose that font on the fly. So now if I go to my fonts and I were to go in and type, if I go to my fonts and I were to find Citadel, there it is. That was the one I liked. I now have just quickly and easily went to Creative Cloud while I was in Illustrator, found the font that I wanted, the font that looked good in my design that I'm currently working on, synced it, never left the application, and was able to mark it as a favorite and use it right here on the spot. Visual font browsing. It's just, again, mind-blowing from the ways we used to do stuff like this. Okay, next up, let's switch over to Adobe InDesign, since I only have a few minutes left. I also want to save time for any of your questions. Oh no, InDesign, don't do this. I remember this from before. This is like not good. So this is where I need to quit InDesign. Or wait, maybe I can do it this way. It's stuck above my monitor here. And that's an OS issue. It's stuck over there too. Okay, let's quit out of it. Hang on, brief pause here. Oh, cancel. I was able to, it was basically asking me, do I want to save? And I was able to grab it before it went away. Cool. All right, now let's go ahead and bring this back over. Let's go ahead and stretch this out so I don't have to quit. I'll just go ahead and open up that document one more time that I just had open. Cool. And now I'm back to where I was. Okay. Let's start here. First and foremost, you've been there before. You're laying something out for someone and they say, oh, I don't like that tower. Now, this is a tower that I photographed back in the day in Malmo, Sweden. This is the turning torso. They don't like my photo. It's fine. I don't care. But they want a tower there. They just don't want this one. Well, let's say I personally don't have any more towers to use, or they've exhausted and they've looked through all mine. I can right click on this one and I can say, find similar images. And this is new inside of InDesign, that it will source Adobe stock. It will look at the image that you just right clicked on, and it will find similar images that are like the one you just clicked on. So it's basically finding towers against the blue sky. And I can say, I can now drag one in. And if my client likes this one better, which I will now fit this one down. If they like that one better, then we're all set. If not, then we'll just keep coming back to this until they find one that they like. All right, the next one is font related again. So let's go ahead. I was just reading Mike's comment there. Let's go ahead and switch over to our layers panel. In our layers panel, I'm just going to lock the image layer. I'm going to unlock the Explorer layer. All right, so now I've got the Explorer layer unlocked, but this particular font, this is something you can do in Illustrator, you can do it in InDesign, maybe Photoshop, I can't remember, but certainly in InDesign and Illustrator. It's a new way of looking at new fonts. Besides font browsing, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about the font itself. We're used to downloading and syncing fonts that are, bold and italic and heavy and thick and thin and slanted and whatever, all the different styles. And of course, the more styles means the more fonts you have to have loaded, because you have to have each one of those styles loaded separately. But what if all of that technology could be built into the single font itself? So what I'm referring to are variable fonts. And if I pop down my font menu, we can see that this is an Acumen, or Acumen, yes. Acumen variable concept. So it's a concept font, but it has the OpenType logo with the VAR on the end of it, meaning that this is a variable font. So as we go forward, we can expect more font foundries to make variable fonts so that instead of you having to have 50 different styles to make it look the way you want it to look, there will be a little control underneath your font selection. So this will only appear when you have a variable font selected. So when I click on that, that will bring up this little slider all the way. Oh God, it's doing that thing again. Hang on. Yeah, it's off to the side here. I'm trying to think, how can I get this over here so you can see it? It brought it up, but it's on my other monitor. Let me see if I can, and I can't pull it over. Let's see if I can tell InDesign to only use this monitor. Let's see. Let's see if that'll work. If not, I'll try the other one. Nope, that didn't work. I can drag the sliders, but I want you to see the sliders. And let's try it on this one. Let's try it one more time. There we go. So here are the sliders. So I get weight, width, and start. And so basically what this is allowing me to do is adjust the weight of the font. And with ever so slight degrees, I'm dragging a slider, but you could type it in to get it exactly what you want. I made it too big so it doesn't fit. But making a font, because sometimes you have bold and you have regular and you have semi and you have light. And you need something in between all of those. Now you would have that something in between all of those. You want the width to be thicker, thinner. You've got control over all of that to a varying degree. You want it to be slanted. We can slant it where maybe italics is too much. You just want a slight slant. You can now go ahead and just slightly slant it or exaggerate it. So variable font controls, definitely a big boost here in InDesign. All right, next up, switch over to this document. This is kind of just a fun one from a Adobe Sensei powered option as well, where it's using artificial intelligence to figure things out. So I'm gonna go to my libraries, and I'm gonna get out of this search here. And I'm going to scroll. There should be a chair in here somewhere. There's the chair, a couple chairs. And I'm going to pull over this chair. Now we can see it. We can see that it's on a gray background, and we can see the chair's off to the left side. I'm going to drop it into this frame that's already here. And of course, as InDesign always does, it shows it to us in a 100% size. Now, I could play around with the fitting options. So I can select that frame. Let's go to our selection tool, select that frame. And I can go to my fitting options and start playing with it. But if I fill frame proportionally, or I'm sorry, fit content proportionally, I get that. If I fill frame proportionally, I get that. Basically, I would have to not only size it down, but move it. So let's undo those. And what if I could do it all in one click with a newer option, a new fitting option called Fit or content-aware fit. So like content-aware scale, content-aware fill, content-aware fit, meaning that it will look at the subject of the photo and just do the right thing. Even still with good composition where it's not directly in the center. So it's saying, oh, I think the chair is the subject of this photo. Let me go ahead and put make sure you can see all of the chair and just do it with one click without you having to click it, size it, move it around, get it just right, and so forth and so on. So all of the image is still there. You can still mess around with it, but content-aware fit will usually get it to look right in the first click. Okay, here's another big, huge time saver. So you got this magazine all laid out, ready to go, and someone comes back, client, art director, somebody says, it'd be great if we could have a landscape version of that for online. We're not going to just do print. And you're thinking, because if you were to go in to your document setup and you were to just simply make it wide, well, you could do that, but then you get this. You'd have to go and touch every single element and put it back on the pages and scale them and rearrange them and get them just right to look right on the wide pages. So just flipping the orientation of the document doesn't really help you. But what if you go to the Properties panel and you could now just click Adjust Layout? And so when I click Adjust Layout, This does it intelligently. This gives you some options, but I'm just going to say wide. I'm not going to even pick any options. I'm just going to do the same thing. So when I click wide and click OK, it does it intelligently. It puts stuff on the page. Now, you still need to go and look at every page to make sure it did it the way you want it. But it saved you the time of having to touch every single element and put every single element on the pages where you need to be. Now, we've had liquid layout and all kinds of things for creating iPad applications back in the day and all that. But those all required some setup. Those all required you to have to do something first to make it liquid. I didn't have to do anything to this. This is just the same layout, no special features added to this. Just told it to adjust the layout, and it figured out what to do. All right, next up. This is a huge one for the firms that are watching that do PDF commenting. Like you make an InDesign document, you send it out, you get comments back. And the problem is if you send it out to multiple people and you get multiple PDFs back with multiple different comments, some people are going to say the same thing, some people are going to say different things. And so how would you manage all that? Well, now in InDesign, you have the ability to import PDF comments, first and foremost. So I can say, I can grab multiple documents. I can grab them all. If I got back comments from multiple people, I could do that. And if I import the comments, I'll see them all in one window. I'll see everyone's comments, who made them, what they said, so forth and so on. And that's great. But if it's something that I need to act upon, like, is this the final font? Well, that's a yes or no. But Wayne is actually changing the address. So I can click on the address. What's he talking about? Oh, that address is wrong now. That address got updated. And I can actually go in and accept Wayne's change. So I can say, no, I don't want to mark it completed. I want to actually accept it. Hold on. Oh, that's why I was on the wrong one. Sorry. There we go. I can accept Wayne's change, and it will actually make the change. Now, in this case, it made it in the same font. This was probably typed in all caps, so I would just need to go back in and make sure that the style was updated to be all caps again, which I could quickly do. But that's it. So I'm not having to I'm not having to transpose what he typed in the comments and I'm introducing new typos. I'm taking exactly the feedback that I got. I can click on any of the feedback and zoom in to what they're talking about, and it will zoom in automatically. So April 29th. Oh, that should be April 29th? Yes, accept the change, and it does it. So it will let me take feedback from people that are entrusted to give me the feedback and implement their changes right on the spot from the comments, from the PDF that got imported back to InDesign. And we got 3 minutes to go. I'll stay on as long as you want to ask questions, but I'm going to stop here. All right, let me put my sound back on so that I can hear what you guys are saying. And just make sure I'm on the right audio here. I am not on the right audio. There we go. I see some favorite features being listed already. Kirsten, are you still there? Oh, let me unmute my mic as well. That would help. All right, now you should be able to hear me. Kirsten, you still there? All right, I hear you. Great AI features, cool. Yep, use the chat pod, as Kimberly suggested, for anything else you want to ask or talk about. Cool. Well, the commentary is starting to come in now. Lots of thank yous, and people are happy, looks like. Great, Carolina. Nice to hear. Do assets require Adobe Stock licensing? What do you mean by assets? Which assets? That's a good question. So I saw a question that says, what if you open up a freeform gradient document in an older version of Illustrator? What will that gradient be? Will it be a gradient or will it be a gradient mesh? I don't know. I've not tried that, but that is something on my now to list of things to try. I'd have to try it with an older version, which I don't have loaded here to try that, but that's great. Question about will you have access to the video? The video link will stay the same, so I'm not going to delete it. You guys can always go back and watch it or pass it on to whoever wants to see it. Feel free to pass it on to whoever needs to see it. The hair sample, your absolute favorite. I know when you do select and mask the right way, it's mind-blowing what you can achieve. They can be used. Oh, so the assets pointed out in the public libraries, yes, they can be used commercially royalty-free. So those assets are given to you for that reason. They're given to you for you to be able to use. The only issue would be is if you're putting them in things you're trying to resell. So like, for example, if you took Kyle's brushes and you tried to make them John's brushes and resell them, that would be an issue. But if you're just using it to create and design stuff, no, it should not be a problem. As long as you're not repackaging them and reselling them. Or like the art that I download, or that one library, like I couldn't put that art out as a clip art series and resell it. So that's where we draw the line. All right. All right. Looks good. Well, it looks like this was well needed and received. It looks like you guys learned a lot today, which is making me happy, making me smile. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. I guess we're gonna end the. I'm gonna end the YouTube. If we're all done. Let's go ahead and end that and end.